Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our wonderful masterclass with Steve Parish. Wherever you are, can you please just in the comments, just give us an idea where you are watching from? We'd love to see. But firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you tonight from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land. I pay my deepest respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to any First Nation people joining us tonight from across Australia and beyond. Wherever you are, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the enduring connection that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have to country and to kangaroos. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. As I said, please share where you are watching in from. We would really love to see what areas are coming in. My name is Rick Allport. I am the Kangaroos Alive Project Coordinator, and my main roles are looking after World Kangaroo Day and also our Kangaroo Walks and Talks program. Thank you for joining us tonight for our session with Steve Parish in preparation for this year's World Kangaroo Day. Before I introduce Steve, I would like to share with you our World Kangaroo Day 2025 theme, Sacred Totem, National Icon. This year's theme recognises the deep cultural and spiritual significance of kangaroos. As a sacred totem, kangaroos have been central to the lives, ceremonies and teachings of First Nations peoples over 80,000 years. They are companions, guides and providers, woven into ancestral memory and cultural lore. As a national icon, kangaroos have been acknowledged as the symbol of colonised Australia since 1773. They appear on the coat of arms and are celebrated across government, sport and industry. Admired for their strength, grace and ecological harmony, kangaroos have lived on this land for over 20 million years, shaping the landscape with their soft-footed presence. Kangaroos Alive is proud to work in partnership with Back to Country, guided by the UN Declaration for Kangaroos. This year's artwork is titled Buru, created by Jerinja UN artist Peter Hewitt. Buru means kangaroo in the UN language and honours the cultural lessons kangaroos carry about kinship, community, responsibility and balance with country, and pays tribute to the ancient artists who first engraved and painted Buru in the landscape. Just before we start, there will be a chance for questions at the end of Steve's presentation. Please write your questions in the comments section and I will read as many as possible for Steve to answer once he is finished. It's time now to introduce our main star of the evening. We are truly honoured to have Steve Parish with us tonight, who has been the main judge of our World Kangaroo photo competition since it first started. Steve is a passionate and inspiring photographer, speaker, writer, teacher and digital artist with over 5 decades of experience photographing Australia's natural and social history. He pioneered underwater nature photography with the Australian Museum in the 1960s. And he went on to build the largest privately owned photographic library in the country. Steve began publishing at just 18 and has since shared his work through thousands of books, magazines, talks, exhibitions and events. Please join me in welcoming Steve Parish to our evening.
Hello everybody.
How are you, Steve?
Okay, I'm up in the Blackall Ranges, Sunshine Coast, a place called Malum, which is one of the Glasshouse Mountains. It's just not quite as sexy as the Sharp Spheres. It's a bit of a lump, and so I live on 10 acres. I've got grey kangaroos, and very occasionally, we see a swampy. But of course, the area is getting slowly developed, so the kangaroos are less commonly seen now, but they're still here. I'm going to show you a couple from the backyard. So tonight we're going to be looking at some tips that are gleaned from my own personal career playing with these wonderful animals. I don't consider it to be work. I consider it to be a very joyful and fulfilling activity. So let's start with the photograph of the first kangaroo. I actually joined the Parks and Wildlife Service in the Navy as a search and rescue diver. I was very much into fishing those days. And when I left the Navy in 1975 and I came to Queensland, I joined the Queensland National Parks and Wildlife Service as their photographer and their interpreter. So I was in a very fortunate position to be employed by the Queensland government to do what I absolutely adored doing. And while I did photograph macropods for this, I worked with the scientists and helping scientists interpret whatever animals groups they were working on. We had specialists working particularly with red kangaroos. But I didn't I was in love with possums, actually, but much more than macropods at that particular time. But I left in 1981 and signed a contract with Rigby Publishers to go on a big tour of Australia collecting for a whole range of, in those days, coffee table books. There was no YouTube in those days. And very little material could be acquired by the general public for exploring Australia. So they employed me to go out and make all these coffee table books. And one of them was called Wilderness Experience. And I arrived in the Flinders Ranges and I was actually looking for yellow-footed rock wallabies. And I went out with some Indigenous people in the Gammon Ranges, which is the northernmost area of the Flinders. And I was sitting at a little waterhole late one afternoon, hoping I was going to encounter some yellow-footed rock wallabies. And this wonderful teenage female Euro, a wallaroo, I think they're the prettiest of all the faces. And I know that you animal carers out there that may be watching this are going to disagree with me. But I just love the big eyes and the lovely roundish ears. Anyway, this animal leapt off the top of a cliff and bounced vertically down the little ledges on the cliff. It had obviously come down in its mother's pouch. It knew where every ledge was, landed at the bottom, hopped down to the little spring, lifted its head and looked at me, and I looked through my then 600mm f4 Nikon lens and focused in and fell in love. And I thought, wow, not so much with the animal itself, but that fantastic ability to just leap off that cliff and come down this vertical rock wall, because for the perspective that I was on, I couldn't see the little ledges. And so I sort of was heading off on what, would you believe, a 12-month trip. And so 1984, and I think it was about July, is when I fell in love with the macropods and set about photographing as many as I possibly could. So we have 70 species. And for those of you that aren't familiar across the range of various species, there are about 70 of them. And when I say about, there's sometimes some argument taxonomically about whether a species is a separate species or not. So I tend to refer to them as around 70 species of macropods. And there's 25. And my goal was to get a side-on portrait at least of as many species as I possibly could. And I've got it up to about 50, 55, I think it is now. We used to have a poster with every species on them. I know that there's a couple. The Mojong from the Kimberley is one that I have yet to photograph. I'm heading for the Kimberley in 4 weeks and I hope to get one. And also the Cape York rock wallaby is another one. As far as I know, no one has actually photographed the Cape York rock wallaby in the wild alive. Most of the mammal books display it with a skin from a museum. So that's a very, very restricted range and very difficult to get close to species. So what I'm going to encourage people, what I like to do is encourage people that when they photograph an animal, they do some research, and if you're going to post it on the internet, you'll probably notice that on my social pages, I love to write because I see words and images as being joined at the hip. Disseminating information is my great passion. And I've written and published for specialists on all sorts of different mammals, but particularly macropods over many, many, many years. So there are three families. One of them, the musky rat kangaroo, there's only one species. We're going to see that animal in a moment, the Hypsiprimodon. And of course, the macropodidae, we have four extinct, and there's one subfamily, the banded hair wallaby. And the potoroos, the potorade, the four extinct. The desert rat kangaroo is one of them, and so it's worth doing some homework. And when you go to publish your species, do some research, and not only publish what you find, maybe in a museum website, but also your own feelings and your own observations, linking that up with the animal, particularly leading into World Kangaroo Day, where we wanted to, really promote these animals and get them in front of people. It's very much more powerful if you can adjunct your own experience, your own thoughts, feelings, on your particular encounter. Now, I've got the word judging there, my judging criteria for the competition, and let's just talk about the word judging. Every image that I look at, every time I raise my camera to my eye, I've already gone through a process. I've looked at the design elements, I've looked at the perspective, I've looked and started to reflect on the composition, what it is that I want to say with this picture. Do I want a tight image? Do I want a horizontal? Do I want a vertical? What kind of an image? So what I'm going to do is step you through 1 to 4, the elements that I look for when I'm not just judging what would be your images when you submit them for the competition, but I would be doing this to my own images, and I'm handling images almost every day. So number 1 is a strong sense of place. And let's have a look at these one after the other. Then a high level of mood, high level of design, and then, of course, the technical capture and post-production refinements, where we're looking at things like sharpness and softness and lightness and darkness. So we're going to slide through. Unfortunately, on this particular software, I'm not able to use my cursor. You won't be able to see my cursor. I've talked the guys into doing the next workshop with Zoom when you will be able to see the cursor, which enables me to point to sort of areas of an image, but we'll do our best. So let's look first of all at a strong sense of place. So that's the relationship between the animal and its environment, right, which is about the storytelling. So in this case, the Lumholtz tree kangaroo, strong sense of place, relationship between the animal and environment. Of course, they live up trees. This is a artistic expression. I have 2 styles. I have images that I have layered textures and painterly reflective backgrounds to give them a more artistic effect. And I have super realistic. On the screen, as you're seeing it there, you probably won't see many of the artistic elements, but it's a textural overlay that I put onto some of my, what I call fine art images. And when you blow them up and hang them on your wall, they have a more painterly appearance. It's a wonderful activity, and it's the sort of thing that I love to do with my images in the evenings, listening to heavy metal music. And yeah, I'm a bit of a headbanger. So yes, the Lumholtz tree kangaroo, that's a female dozing on the right, and of course her young Joey, or not terribly young, that would be definitely heading towards the yearling. And this was photographed in the wild, would you believe, right outside a public coffee shop which is now closed actually on the northern end of the Atherton Tableland. I've got friends that live in the rainforest in the Atherton Tableland, and I've sat on their verandas and seen Lumholtz tree kangaroos climb down and sit there and scratch and feed on leaves right off their veranda, which is pretty fantastic to be able to do. This is a bridal nail-tail wallaby, an endangered species. The problem with bridal nail-tails that used to be widely distributed right through Queensland, arid mallee, woodland country, stony country, right down through into New South Wales, is that they are very easily hunted down by wild dogs, and of course even foxes will predate, particularly on the juveniles. They've got an unusual behaviour for a wallaby. When they flee, they might only flee a fairly short distance, and they tend to want to hide. So they're very easily tracked down by a predator. This particular animal is a raised protected species from Scotia, the Australian Wildlife Conservancy property in southwestern New South Wales. I spent some time there photographing for them many years ago. They're a beautiful animal, and amongst the wallabies, they're one of my absolute iconics. And of course, this one, the relationship between the animal and environment, they're definitely an arid animal, sort of rocky country. They're not a rock wallaby, but they will live in rocky woodlands, right through into the desert country. And of course, the relationship between these two little creatures, this is the Hypsiprimodon. This is the smallest of our macropods. These are a dawn-dusk feeder. I'll throw in a little bit of camera tech as we go along. This was shot with a 400mm lens on a Canon 1DX, I think it was, and they will come out into the open in the dawn and the dusk periods, early morning, late afternoon, and they look for truffles. They look for fruits on the forest floor. They're rather gorgeous. They're not so adverse to movement, physical movement, so you can sit in the forest quietly, move a little bit, but sounds, they don't like motor drives, and they don't tolerate electronic flashes. So I tend to use the higher ISO, and I don't use electronic flashes at all when I'm photographing these little fellows. Got one flash and you won't see them for another 40, 45, 50 minutes. Now, this is the antilopine wallaroo. This is one of the wallaroos, and this is a species from northern Australia. And you can see this wonderful sequence of four having a bit of a scratch, a bit of a lick, a bit of a scrub of the nose. You can see that sort of behavioural sequence. Fun thing to do. And if you're submitting for the competition, don't hesitate to submit a 1, 2 or 3 sequence. You can turn it into a triptych too. You can put 3 images in one frame if you want to tell a little photo story. Now, while the competition doesn't actively promote caption writing and titling, you'll seduce me as the judge with a really snappy title. It's really fun to do, and a little one sentence or 2 sentence caption with the photograph is always very handy, particularly for Kangaroos Alive people to do promotions and start to spread the word on social media. It saves them having to do that sort of research. Now, this is a juvenile yellow-footed rock wallaby. It's a bit of a toss-up between, for me, the bridal nail-tail wallaby and the yellow-footed rock wallaby. I think the wonderful thing about the yellow-footed rock wallaby isn't just so much the markings, but they're rather scarce. And if you can actually find one and spend time with 1 or 2, I've actually got one with 5 joeys all from different parents, all playing together on the rocks. And this is on the Bundaroo Road through the Flinders Ranges. There's a couple of spots there that they do advertise. There's a sign beside the road, and buses pull over, and lots of noisy people get out, and the yellow-footed rock wallabies have become quite familiar with noise and people activity. So that's fabulous for a photographer. I actually spent several hours there on my own, just sitting quietly with a long lens, playing with these. I use the word playing quite often because I see all of this activity. It's just pure fun. I'm 80 in a month. I'm still playing. Okay, so this is the burrowing bettong. This is from a wildlife conservancy property called Yarrawonga, I think it's called. It's an educational wildlife conservancy property in South Australia. They have the hairy-nosed wombat, they have the brush-tailed bettong and the burrowing bettong. And I pursue, doing books on these animals and wanting to record as many species and as much behaviour as possible, sometimes going to these properties because you won't find a burrowing bettong. I think I'm correct in saying they're only found offshore islands, Western Australia now, or in reserves, easily preyed upon, particularly by the foxes, and they live underground and come out at night to feed. So the next section we're looking at is the high level of mood, the emotional reaction, the ability to connect with a viewer. So what is it about the image that's going to get that emotional reaction? And of course, weather and light play the role here. This is a beautiful backlit photograph. So what I've done, this is actually a 600mm f4 on a Nikon, shot with film. This was from the 1990s. None of this sexy eye tracking, mirrorless cameras available. So I didn't go mirrorless until 2 years ago. So that's all new to me. And I didn't go digital until 2004, I think it was. And I think the first digital cameras were 12 megapixels in those days. Now they've gone well beyond that. So weather and light. So what I've done is I've positioned myself. I've seen the macropod on a bit of a hill. The sun was to the right. So I just simply changed my camera position and shot this wonderful silhouette and captured what is referred to as ring lighting. That's a term that we apply to a design element in lighting. This is a full silhouette. Love this picture. That's a mackerel, what's called a mackerel sky. It's one of the wonderful skies that you frequently see. And some of my favourite images were actually images under a mackerel sky. You can see how I've positioned this image very low in the frame and given the emphasis on the sky, really accentuating the fact that these animals have got lots of space to move in. They would have been western grey kangaroos. So what I'm also going to show you is some of the entries that we've had over the last couple of years. This Morning Light by Barry Feldman is a ripper, isn't it? You can see he's obviously just triggered their movement, but the way that light is just absolutely pouring down with the beautiful mist, an absolutely gorgeous picture. That would have been a runner-up in the selection. It's a tough job because we get hundreds and hundreds of images entered, and it's a fun thing to enter. I give master classes, and I think there are other prizes. Perhaps Rick can talk about that when we've finished. And this is the beautiful black and white. I love black and white. I love monochrome, taking out the colour and just adding the drama and those lovely light pouring through. So this first light image is a wonder. A little bit compositionally, a bit of a struggle compositionally, but a wonderful image there of a full-blown male adult grey kangaroo into the sunrise with Wayne Phil Williams. So again, mood. Sunsets and pouches. the golden hour, late afternoon, a lovely wallaroo, a lovely yellow-footed rock wallaby. Background's nice and soft, but still resolved enough to see all that lovely rocky escarpment, really putting the animal in its habitat. So it sort of captures a couple of important messages. It gets across the story of the habitat and also the mood, capturing the attention. Love this image. Jane Gibbs, kangaroo silhouette, Aurora australis. So she's got this incredible light and the tiny little kangaroo silhouettes on the horizon. Absolutely powerful image. So when you're sorting through your images, considering what you're going to enter, you now will have a bit of a handle on the ideas. And what I do is I try and highlight as many as I possibly can. I'd like to give there's so many images, I'd like to give everybody a winning selection. But I drill down and I always produce a screen recording and have a bit of a chat, similar to what we're doing now, and present the work for all the world to see. And this is from the macropod carers category. A couple of years ago, I encouraged the guys to sort of split carers from general photography because they're very, very different thing. And of course, the caring community, and, you know, I've worked with bat carers and possum carers and all sorts of different caring groups. The work and effort that these guys put into caring for these animals is absolutely fantastic. I love this image. Stefan Drael, Ellie. That looks to me like a wallaroo. I do get them wrong sometimes. Deborah Davey, Second Chance. This looks like possibly a Western grey kangaroo. And again, very emotive in the carers category. And this was second place, Tangi Chambers, Caring Hands. Love this. And I love the fact that the hands are a mature, hardworking, earth-connected gentleman. And that terrific eye contact. Of course, eye contact is absolutely fabulous, but not necessarily always the most powerful way to capture. And this was Carer's first place from, I think it was last year. Beautiful, beautiful golden light in the background, lovely bouquet in the background, and this lovely wallaroo. This was red male kangaroo. Sorry, beautiful face markings from Andy Smythe. Again, terrific mood, lovely dark surrounds, very striking. And this is one of mine. This is an image from Hattaclincline National Park, which is a tiny little national park up on the river country in northwestern New South Wales. And that's a big buck Western grey kangaroo, big male. And it's an artistic expression, although the background is quite natural. And it was running very late one afternoon, lens wide open, f4, across the farmer's wheat field, actually. And so I've sort of blurred the wheat field out a bit to capture this sort of isolation. So this is where we're connecting through space. The mood is really enhanced. I rather love this image. And of course, Hattaclincline has a bit of a problem with macropods because it's quite a small park. There's permanent water there. And so Western grey kangaroos are very, very, very common, along with wallaroos as well, but particularly Western grey kangaroos, hundreds and hundreds of them, and some reds. And of course, they come out at night and feed on the crops. And of course, the farmers aren't too happy. So the Victorian National Park people have got a bit of a challenge. They're dealing with unhappy graziers. And this is one of my favourites. You might have got a glimpse of. I've got one of these printed on acrylic on the mantle behind me while I'm speaking. When I come back on, you'll see it. But this is a beautiful shot of eastern grey kangaroos on the beach at Cape Hillsborough National Park. If you're ever heading up to North Queensland, don't miss Cape Hillsborough. You'll find on the beach every single morning eastern grey kangaroos and the wallabies. And the wallabies will come down onto the beach as well. They'll even drink the salt water. And if you're there early in the morning, of course, you're going to get that wonderful golden sunshine. And of course, some play boxing goes on every morning. And of course, you've got to fight for the space with the tourists because there's a nice little caravan park there. It's not terribly overpopulated. There's also a little bat cave too up to the right. It's a fantastic place to call in and camp overnight. Not far from Youngler National Park also, fantastic place to visit. So our next criteria is a high level of image design. This is where we look at perspective and we look at design elements and we look at the framing of our image. So this is a page from my masterclass where I talk about design principles and elements, and I do that in quite some detail in one of the ebooks, which is ebook number 3, which is The Art of Seeing Art. And that's where we talk about things like pattern and balance and emphasis, and understanding these basics can also help you with your composition. So this is a very classic example of a high level of perspective in design. The framing's fantastic. The darker background, which can be enhanced somewhat with post-production. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of the capture process. I shoot everything in RAW. I don't think I've ever taken a JPEG photograph in the camera. Not that you can't, and you can't, you can certainly get lovely images, but you're able to bring them into your post-production softwares and do things like lighten foregrounds and darken backgrounds and give add a little bit more drama to the image. So these play boxes from Glennie's Lily is a classic, and there's lovely things there. There's a lovely texture of the fur, a little bit of play boxing. They're quite juvenile. They would be barely past yearling, Eastern Greys. Terrific framing, and that would have been a runner-up and probably a hard one not to choose as the winner. Another one there. Beautiful golden light in the background. So you've got the 3 layers of colour. You've got your foreground, middle ground, and background. But your eye goes directly there, doesn't it, to the play boxing going on. Wonderfully composed. This is an interesting one, and I'm sure all you macropod nuts have all been out and you stumble across a mob, and if you rock still, and what I normally do is sit down or lie down. I've even laid down and feigned going to sleep and had a mob turn around and come back and for a closer look. They become very curious. You might have seen my black dingo photograph from my Facebook page, where I tell a story about feigning death in the desert, and the dingo took 25 minutes to come all the way up. In fact, became so close to me that I couldn't focus on it. So that's one way of getting animals to come look. I like to work alone. I don't, I do travel at times with a mate or two, but they always go one way and I go the other. Stillness and solitude are very important photographing wildlife. You can have much more control over the reaction of something like a macropod, how they might behave, whether they might, be a bit edgy. These are certainly edgy. They're on the verge. You can see on the left there, it wouldn't have taken very much for them to bolt. And of course, once 1 or 2 bolt, then they're all going to follow, even those that are having a bit of a graze there would soon pick up. So, dropping down to their level really makes a difference. This is absolutely gorgeous. Brothers in arms, absolutely gorgeous. Lovely eye contact, terrific design elements. You've got the grasses left and right, lovely soft colours, and away into the background where there's nothing disturbing the eye at all, beautifully composed in a square format. So we've got ratios, we've got 1-to-1 ratio, 2-to-3 ratio. We've got panoramic ratios, all those sort of things. And there's an example of what would be 1:2 ratio. That was the overall winner 2 years ago, yes. A misty morning, Brendan Attard. And you might go onto Facebook and find Brendan if he's not with us tonight. He's got a very nice style, very, very nice style. And I absolutely adored that picture. And it is a classic example of a high level of image design, perspective design elements and framing. And the fact that the animal's moving away from me doesn't deter me at all. It's a dark on the right, light on the left. It's got somewhere to go. It's got movement forward. Where is your eye going? You're having this conversation, not necessarily having the conversation for action behavioural images in the field, particularly with bird photography, because having that, what I call self-talk, is for doing things like wildflowers and landscapes. But these things happen very, very quickly. But all of the elements in the background, foreground, middle ground, and around the animal itself, the light on the animal, really, really enhance that the splendidness of that image. So here she is getting down to it. That was a wildlife workshop that I did in Cleland in South Australia in Adelaide. I grew up not far from that fauna park. A lovely group of people, and of course the macropods. Encouraging people to get what I call getting down and dirty. I don't have any trouble getting down. As I age, I have a little struggle getting back up again sometimes. This on the left is not from there; it's from Kangaroo Island, and that is a western grey kangaroo, and it shot at ground level. But notice the difference of the perspective. You get that eye level. All wildlife, where you possibly can, getting down to their level is very, very important. It really makes a difference. That's right outside my studio door. Before my daughter moved into a cottage on the property with then a 2-year-old boy, and as soon as the 2-year-old boy moved in, the macropods didn't visit anymore. They were very sensitive because we didn't feed them, we didn't chum them up. They weren't our friends. They just came and grazed on the lawn out the front, tiny little bit of lawn. But there he is, that direct eye contact, a very powerful image for using if you're promoting macropods, or you're doing prints, or you're selling product, or you're on social and you want people to adore your pictures. Eye contact. And I know back in my publishing days for things like children's book covers and postcards, all the pictures that were very popular all had eye contact. Very important. This one is not quite eye contact, sort of looking down a little bit, but I love this image, particularly for the framing, compositional, big-footed macropod. It's a great illustration for the very word macropod, which means big-footed. So David Alexander, the Eastern Grey Kangaroo portrait. Again, beautiful, beautiful light to the left. Again, these are things that you can enhance a little bit. Maybe if we do a Zoom, we're going to do another Zoom talk in July. I'll be able to pull Lightroom onto the screen and just show you how very easy it is to just touch your images very gently and enhance them to be able to sort of better direct the viewer's eye around the frame. So this is a very handsome, very, very handsome Eastern Grey Kangaroo. And code, Donald Chin, this is Look Up. So there's a couple of, they look like Western Grey Kangaroos. You do get a brownie, sometimes get a brownie Eastern, pretty hard to know. Doesn't matter really. But there they are having a bit of a play box. If that was serious, then you'd know about it. And Mother's Embrace, I love this image. I think that actually went on to win Tangi Chambers' Mother's Embrace in that particular competition. Terrific. So the relationship between mother and young is always very beautiful, and I'm sure all you macropod lovers, kangaroo, wallaby fanatics would agree with me. These animals are so evocative, aren't they? Their body language, their interactions with each other, they all have individual personalities. And we just know so little, not just about macropods and their behaviour, but we know so little about the behaviours of the animals. And I know that my fishes that I've been in love with for 60 years, the things they're finding out about fish now in terms of intelligence and memory and recognition and all sorts of fantastic things. You know, when you go into a fish shop, you don't want to buy fish and chips anymore. I see them as little people. So now we're moving to 7:45, so we've got another 15 minutes. So this is where we're talking now about technical capture and post-production refinement. So this is sharpness and softness, lightness and darkness. So all captures are made up of the craft and the art of photography, right? The art is sharpness and softness. What element of the image is sharp? What element is soft? We have control over that. Lightness and darkness, again. And of course, we can add to that colour management. And of course, the craft is the balancing of the exposure triangle, where we're handling our, I covered this extensively in Module 4. It's a difficult subject to embrace and explain, but once you wrap your head around it, your photography becomes a whole different journey. Technical capture, this is a classic example of many features, really. The focus, of course, the composition, the balance. This is a classic picture. Part of the land, beautiful caption. See what I mean? Some of these captions, just reflect on them. I encourage people that do my masterclass to get themselves a Keynote. If you're on a Mac, get yourself a Keynote, or if the Keynote comes free with it, and create an ebook, create a desktop ebook. I go into it in great detail, and it's a place that you can put your favorite images. It sits on your desktop. You get a brilliant idea, there it is, open it up, change the title, add a picture, close the ebook. If you're on a PC, you'll be using PowerPoint. Two extremely valuable, I can't put enough X in front of the extremely valuable tools for developing and managing and growing your creative life. It's all about your creative life. So you have your passion. Your passion is the animals and the photography to share, okay? That doesn't necessarily translate to a longevity, but to have a purpose, a creative purpose. And of course, tonight, we're talking exclusively about purpose. We're trying to promote an awareness, a global awareness, particularly, well, certainly for an awareness in Australia of the importance of these animals, the magic of these animals, the majesty of these animals, the diversity of these animals, the sensitivity of these animals. And we are the ambassadors. So we use our words, we use our images, we get into cohorts, groups together, as Kangaroos Alive as an organisation is doing, working with Indigenous people, doing storytelling, and getting people turned on. It's all about turning people on to these animals and seeing them through different eyes, okay, as individual living beings. Anyway, I'm waxing lyrical. These are special pictures. This is the first time, and I know this for a fact, it's the first time this western grey kangaroo on Kangaroo Island had ever hopped in its life. Hopped. I call it run, call it whatever you like. But his mum got hit by a car. There's millions of them on the island. It's amazing more don't get hit. Twilight on Kangaroo Island, you just don't drive around. It's terrible. Anyway, it was in a caring situation, and they released it, and I happened to be there. I happened to be there when it had its first run. So this is where we get into technical issues, which I won't go into huge detail now, where we're panning with the animal and we're photographing it. And of course, today with our mirrorless cameras, I've got the latest mirrorless cameras now. I've got Canon cameras that lock onto the animal's eye and will track it wherever it goes. So fantastic tools. So you've got two situations. You've got an animal running in parallel, and you've got an animal running towards you. Now, the fact that you can actually maintain focus on an animal that's coming towards you, as opposed to going, horizontally in a plane, it's very much a different challenge. So that's something. These are some of my wildlife fauna park. I've done a lot of work with fauna parks. I'm actually a big fan of fauna parks and some zoos. And I guess because I was turned on to animals as a little boy, my uncle from India that had stories about man-eating tigers eating people, it took me to a zoo to see a tiger. And you can imagine when you're a little boy that, stories like this. And I fell in love with the idea. And of course, the public can connect with these animals and see them. So these are just some lovely little black and whites. This is the Joey from my front yard, done in a black and white style, a Lumholtz kangaroo. These are artistic expressions, sort of like a charcoal textural expression. Anyway, back to David Alexander, the eastern grey kangaroo. We'd already seen those two. Russell Spence, action with the mob. So this is a motion blur, again, technical capture. Again, frozen action, beautiful pin sharp image. There's nothing wrong with that image at all. The only reason it wouldn't have been picked for winner, it just needed that extra little bit of light or something to make it super special. So it had some competition to go ahead with. So that sort of gets through some of the macropods. And I'm just going to briefly now take this opportunity to introduce you to some of the work. This is my Photography Pathway to Purpose Masterclass. This is where I've poured my passion and love, and I'm constantly updating it. It's a lifetime commitment. I sell it for $2.95. It's ongoing. I do live talks, and you can do it live online. You can see the journal in the middle. I'm offering it to you guys tonight at a 30% discount. I'll give you the email address if you're interested. I'm very happy to do that. But it takes you on that journey where you develop your creative life purpose. You've got your projects, the art of seeing, the capture and field craft, the digital darkroom, and then connecting with the community. All the ways we can share and connect with community. And you can see in the middle video overview button, you can click on that. And I talk to you right through the module as well. It's got lots of links and there's videos and ebooks to go with it. And I have to say, without wanting to sound like I'm bragging, it's globally totally unique because it covers everything. For love, for money, I do the commercial aspects, I do the promotional aspects, and we dive deep into the whole philosophy of the human existence and the joy connecting to nature can bring to our lives. So you can go to masterclass events, steveparish.com.au. I'm all over the internet. You just have to Google it. And I also have a field guide. The field guide comes free with the masterclass, by the way. So you come away with dozens of videos, dozens of ebooks, and that circumnavigates the whole of Australia. So for $29.95 less 30%, you will get the Around Australia guides and the masterclass all thrown in together. I also do wildlife photography workshop here in Queensland, very unique, where we actually bring in the animals and show people how to photograph them. We have a little baby bettong. It's the only macropod we actually bring in. These are all hand raised They're all approved by national parks, and Geckos Wildlife in Queensland. Been working with them for years and years. So if anyone's interested in that, we've got one on the 12th of September, and we're having an 80th birthday cake because 2 days later I turn 80. So that's the introduction to wildlife photography. I've also got the Art of Seeing Art in Sydney coming up. This is just a closing little ad. You can see that coming up. That'll be live for people to book. And we also have one up here in Queensland coming up. So everybody, that was fun, and it's exactly time, isn't it? Almost.
You've done really well, Steve. You've run well to time, and oh boy, what an inspirational webinar you've just given us. That's been amazing. So folks, it's time to do a bit of Q&A with Steve. We've had a few questions come in the chat. I've had some people message me on my phone. I've had a couple of emails come in. So let's get started. So how many photos would you expect to take before you get a great shot?
Yeah, it doesn't sort of work like that. I don't sort of go out with the mindset I'm going to get a great shot. I just go out. I've got to come back to play. And even when I was working much more commercially than I am now, because we don't publish anymore, we lost the business to COVID. Well, it started off with a flood in Brisbane, and then we sort of limped along until we ran into COVID, and we had to close down the physical publishing. You can still buy a lot of the books online, but I don't actually make books. I still make calendars, so my work's digital. But the images, I just sort of go with the flow, and good things happen. You know, if you're in the right frame of mind, your mental attitude is very, very important. So there's no anxiety involved. You know, you're not trying to prove anything. You're not taking pictures to be liked. You're not taking pictures for money. You're taking pictures because you are passionate about the content of the image and the connection that you are having with it. And in my case, my purpose is to inspire others to connect to nature for their mental, physical, spiritual well-being. I have a creative life purpose, which I created and defined in 1984. And I have to say, guys, the most important thing we nature lovers can ever have is a purpose for our passion. So you've got your passion. What's the purpose for it? My purpose didn't evolve until something like 18 years after my passion was born, you know. So it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And when we do the weekends, we talk about this in depth. But it just pops up. It just pops up. This is what I'm going to do with my creative life. So taking that attitude out there, getting around to answering this question in a long-winded way, you shoot, you connect, you record, you use your skills, and when you get home, you upload, particularly if you're shooting action, because it could be a bit soft, or it could be this, or it could be that. Up will pop a piece of magic. I can't remember ever, even when I was early in my career, not getting a piece of magic out of a shoot, you know. And it's that magic that wow factor, and it's the same in post-production when you're particularly doing digital art. You might work on it, and then you get this sort of electric wow feeling. You get this gorgeous feeling, and you can't. And of course, in today's world, you can race off and drop it on social media and see if anyone likes it, and you get an instant kickback. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, it's fun. It's fun. It's good, clean fun.
I think there's a lovely comment that's just come in, and I know who it's from. It's from Tina, a person I know well, who's from Canberra. She actually said, I think our love for them comes out through our pics. I know there are skills to learn, but our passion and adoration of their beauty seems to produce good pics too. And I've seen some of Tina's work, and Tina's work is really quite amazing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tina. Another question we've had: what's the best post-production software for those with limited finances? So either shareware or freeware. What would you suggest?
Well, I tell you what, if you email me at support@nature-connect.com.au, I will email you the pages out of my module 5 that deal with all of the software choices. There are many. There are free software choices. If you have an Apple computer, you will have photos. That's a fantastic piece of software to start with. It's free. It comes with the computer. You can do your highlights and shadows. You can change your color saturation, etc., etc. In terms of pay software, it's about $30 a month now for the Adobe photography package, which gives you Lightroom, gives you Photoshop, gives you Camera Raw, a fantastic, sensational package of software. I've got nearly 500,000 images in one catalogue, and I can type in anything at all, and up will come the images. So if you're young and you've got a life ahead of you, particularly in today's world, and you're shooting with the correct file type, in other words, you're setting your camera up correctly. We could do an entire workshop on this. And it's not rocket science, and it's not that difficult. But if you set it up properly from the beginning, as you age, you might be starting at, I've got people starting at 9, 8, some sensational 12-year-olds doing the most brilliant work, starting that young and then growing into it and doing it correctly from day one. You're going to find that your photographic resource has massive value over time. And of course,
Steve, what you need to do is encourage those youth who are doing incredible shots to enter our youth photography competition for World Kangaroo Day.
Yes,
I think that would be a really good thing. For those who are on PC, if you want to email me, I've got a couple of free photo editing programs that I can share with you. So feel free to email me at info@kangaroosalive.org, and I will share those with you as well.
Yeah, all of the software I recommend will work on PC and Mac.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. Okay, next question. So on my trusty little phone, what are your 3 top tips for not scaring kangaroos or macropods?
Stillness and solitude.
Yeah. Fall asleep on the ground, pretend. Oh, Steve, you've gone to mute.
Anyone that knows kangaroos knows that they're not stupid. They can read your vibes. They can read your body language like puppy dogs. Animals can read humans. I learnt this as a young spearfisherman, killing fish. Even fish can read your vibe, your intent to be a hunter or a passerby. So just withdraw down, lower your profile, sit on the ground quietly. And if you're very close, don't do eye contact. I've sat with big red kangaroos in the wild. They're just completely relaxed. And it gives you a great buzz. To be ignored by a macropod is the ultimate compliment, particularly if you're close up. I went to one place. It was ACT out in the bush, and I went to sleep, and I had a small family of greys come over for curiosity, and I woke up and I could see them there very close to me, and I just stayed. This was some years ago. I just stayed in that dozy situation, didn't lift my head. They came right up to me. These are wild animals, and yeah, that's the way to get close to them.
I think that would be an amazing experience to actually wake up and have these faces looking at you.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be incredible.
They're incredibly curious animals,
Yeah. Another question, what lens do you recommend, or do you have like a series of lenses that you use, or a favorite lens?
Yes, well, I've just gotten rid of my entire DSLR Nikon range, which was extremely old. So old that you couldn't buy spare parts for them. They were D800s, D3S. old school stuff. And I've moved across now to exclusively Canon. I have one carry bag that I can carry on an aeroplane. I've got rid of all my medium format cameras, and I now use R3 Canon, a Canon 5 R5 Mark II, which is a 45 megapixel camera. The R3 is 24 megapixels. One's for low light, one's for better for cropping. And I have lenses. Let's talk about lenses for wildlife. I have a 1-500, which is about $3,500. I bought it secondhand. And I have a 200-800 zoom. Now, the 200-800 zoom only cost, it was under $3,000 new. And it's very light. And, when you look at the YouTubers and the bird photographers that are doing wonderful things, and they're all buying $20,000 lenses. I've owned all those lenses. I want to be able to jump on a plane with one backpack. I'm off the Kimberleys for 5 weeks in a month. And I just want to carry one bag with me in and out of boats, etc., etc. And then on top of that, I've got a 14-24, 100mm macro, and what else? 24-70. So 5 lenses, 2 camera bodies, end of story. There's nothing I can't shoot with that. And the 200-800, that reach is gorgeous, because I don't want one picture. I don't want to have to crop bits of the animal off because it's too close. So I can do headshot, full body shot, animal in the habitat. I want everything. I want to be able to tell a story, and that applies to birds particularly.
So, Steve, okay, question that came in on email. How do you stay inspired after all these years? Like, you've been doing this for a long time, and as you told us, it's going to be your 80th birthday, so a very early happy birthday. But yeah, you've been doing this, and you're one of the world's most respected wildlife photographers.
Oh, I don't think it, I don't know about that.
I think you are. And how have you stayed inspired all these years to keep going? Because your passion is amazing.
Well, it's my purpose. It's cost me 3 marriages. my most recent marriage. These things. This is all connected. And as I said to those 3 ladies that didn't survive, I warned them when we started that this is what I do, 24/7, 7 days a week. I'm not interested in Saturdays or Sundays. I've been self-employed for 45 years. In the publishing days, I was full of anxiety because I had, $15 million turnover and 120 staff, and I had 19 sales reps out there with cars and mobile phones. So all this overheads. But now I have no one to satisfy. My partner lives in the house next door. I live in my studio. We love each other to bits. She's into gardens, native flora, and quantum health. She's 70. I'm 80, and we're happy as a pig in shit. And we've been together 24 years.
I love it. That's amazing. Couple more questions before we call it an evening. What makes kangaroos such powerful subjects to photograph?
Well, they are the largest, furriest. That's an interesting question. The variation. I mean, the huge variation. Everybody shoots grey kangaroos and red kangaroos, and they're wonderful. But you've got all your rock wallabies, and if you turn around and said, "I'm going to shoot the 19 rock wallabies, and I'm going to specialise on them, and I'm going to know everything there is to know, and I'm going to go into the field." See, in Module 2, I talk about projects. Having a project, and macropods are a wonderful project. And for you carers, your project could be the period of time that animal came to you. That whole story is a book. and we've done books on these topics. I've got, you know, the life of a hairy-nosed wombat that was raised in a house with 2 children, slept in their bed, went to school on show and tell day in a basket. All these wonderful little true stories. Used to love making books like those. Yeah, they're big, and if you're hand raising them, they're kind of cuddly as well. Much better than puppy dogs. Puppy dogs are, you know, my partner's got a puppy dog, and it's a pain in the ass, to tell you the truth. It frightens all the wildlife, and it keeps getting excited when it shouldn't be. It's lovely, but it's you know, I would rather have. She used to do raise and release possums. Possums are one of my great loves as well. I've, you know, spent a lot of time chasing possums. They're little people as well. The kangaroos are little people. They're just. I'm very anthropomorphic.
Okay, Steve. So I've got 2 more questions before we wrap it up, and we will allow you to go to bed with your computer. What's the most important thing to remember when photographing wildlife respectfully?
Yes, you particularly if you're in a wild situation, you are an intruder. You know, this is not your habitat; it's their habitat. So I like them to be nice and relaxed. If they're going to be, it's like, you know, when we do our wildlife workshops and we work with these captive animals. These animals are raised, being handled. They come in, snakes come out of the egg and they're handled straight away. They're so used to people, they just totally ignore them. Some people are a bit sort of sensitive to that, think we're using the animals. Sure, we're using them. We're using them to turn other people onto animals. You know, I was watching Attenborough the other night, and he was talking about the sensitivity, the challenge that he had at 90. This is important. The challenge that he had at 90. Well, he started when he was about 89, bringing into his wonderful wildlife stories, where it was just celebratory from one end to the other, closing the film off with the threat to that animal, you know, the conservation issues, but particularly now with global warming. And I watched it only a couple of nights ago, and he said he looked at the camera. He's 90 years of age. If I could only be, you know, that well at 90, 99. He's going to get a ticket from the Queen or the King.
Yeah, the King.
Getting people excited. First, my role and his role. I mean, he's done a much better job with the help of the BBC, turning people on to nature, and then passing them on to the organisations, whether they're in politics like Rob Brown was, or whether they're in conservation areas, national park areas, whatever, to do the protective work. People have got to connect first. And so many people, everybody's connected to nature. We breathe, we drink water. You know, we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for nature. But getting them to realise that they're not the peak of the pyramid, they're part of the process, and getting them to be a little bit more humble in the way they view nature and the human connection in their own lives and the effect that they can have on nature, the natural ecosystem. And getting them to acknowledge that, and then helping them grow from there. So really, you know, I've had, you know, 60 years of celebration. I mean, getting people tugging on the apron strings. You know, I started tugging on my mother's apron strings, trying to turn her onto fish. She wasn't really into fish, but I had great difficulty turning people onto fish. There's about 3 people were diving with cameras in those days, and I was sort of besotted with these things. It's the same with macropods, and explore further. And guys, read, study, be articulate about the animals that you're photographing and that you're going to share with the world, because people do read. I can tell you now that 50 to 60% of the feedback that I get is to do with what I write with my images. When you go to Instagram, you'll see 3 words, Canon 100mm f2.8. I mean, really? Like, the world wants to know what you took. Okay, if you're in a camera forum, but what about where is it? What is it? Why did you photograph it? What motivated you to be emotional and connected with them? This is a beautiful image. It's just fucking pardon the word, laziness, really.
Well, I think this is a good time to bring you back to what you said early on about people entering the competition.
Yes.
Give a brief explanation, give it a description, give it an emotion, because that's going to help you get across your feelings behind the photograph that you've taken. I think
for me, it makes a big difference. I mean, you saw the titles on some of the submissions and those wonderful images. Yeah, wonderful images.
It doesn't have to be a long description. Just some sort of emotional description, I think, is a great idea. So, Steve, we're going to finish you up with one more question tonight. What's one thing you wish more people knew about kangaroos?
I think the diversity, the absolute incredible diversity, I think that will bond people, because most people just see the kangaroo as a pest to drive at night, and of course, if you move out into the bush, I've interviewed kangaroo shooters. I've worked in lots of areas around macropods, not just conservationists and not just naturalists or scientists, and there's many different views. But I think if we as a community, if people can start expressing themselves with these images and having those images come through, it's going to get a much better reaction. So if you want to study that, go to my profile page. It's a profile, and go to my page and just read down into the comments. Follow the comments, because that's where people connect, and have a look at the way that I use words and images together, and start to mimic that. Start to look at ways that you can bring your personal story, your personal connections. And I think the exercise here, this is all about an event that's about to come up, and it's global. I mean, Kangaroos Alive is a global entity, and people are submitting. Well, they can't submit from around the world because the only other macropods are in New Guinea. All the tree kangaroos are up there. I'd love to go up there and play with the tree kangaroos. But anyway, I hope that if anyone wants to connect, support at natureconnect.com.au, - in between nature and connect. And, love to chat, give tips, and anyone wanting to partake in the masterclass and the lessons learned from that. And of course, that work is a combination not just of my own expertise, but also the expertise of many, 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 many people that I've worked with, come across, and had inputs from right across Australia. But I'd say the reason I support Kangaroos Alive is that they're one of the pinnacles of my passion for nature.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Like this whole night has been just amazing. I'd like to remind everybody to sign up for Steve's masterclass. So get in contact with Steve. You've got to do it through the email. So Steve, can you just remind them what the email is?
It's support at nature-connect.com.au.
Yeah,
and
cool.
It's $29.95 with a 30% discount. I don't normally discount things. Even when I did books, I wouldn't discount them. I hate all this giving away. And there's lifetime connection. So you'll get an email every so often, and a major upgrade. I've just done a huge major upgrade. So it's very current. It started in March, and it's only very recently the last.
So how long does the masterclass go for?
Well, it goes for as long as you want it to go.
But the initial class, or
well, I do introductions to it over the weekend, a 2-day weekend, but 12 weeks.
Wow.
Do one module at a time. I encourage people to do one module, although I know they dive ahead. But there's a whole transit story, 6 steps to develop your creative life.
Oh, this is an amazing bargain. I'm going to sign up. My history in photography is rock music photography, and that's so much different to doing macropod and nature photography. They're wild, but not wildlife.
Yeah, so, well, I cover everything because the masterclass covers everything: urban photography, documentary photography, street photography, nature photography, and module 4 in the fieldcraft section covers all those aspects.
Okay, I'm going to sign up. This sounds awesome. So, Steve, everybody, please thank Steve for giving such an inspiring webinar here tonight. So a huge thank you to Steve, and thank you for generously sharing so much time with us and your wisdom and your incredible work. It really has blown us away. We've had some nice comments. I've had some nice emails coming through. And thank you to everybody for being here, for your passion, your curiosity, and your love for kangaroos. So together we're building a movement of respect, protection, and celebration for those iconic animals. So Steve, thank you for being with us. We just have a few things that we're going to finish up with so we can let you go back to listening to some heavy metal music. I'm going to talk to you later on about bands that you like, because I think we're going to have some things in common there. But thank you again, Steve. Really appreciate you being here.
Bless you all. Bye.
So, folks, thank you again for being here. Just a few things we want to do before finishing up. I just wanted to share with you the artwork from Pete Hewitt for World Kangaroo Day 2025, of course, being on October 24. So, of course, as we said earlier, this year's artwork is titled Buru. So created by Jerinja Yuan artist Peter Hewitt. Buru means kangaroo in Yuan language and honours the cultural lessons kangaroos carry. So about kinship, community, responsibility and balance for country. So it pays tribute to ancient artists who first engraved and painted Buru into the landscape. Now, just one final thing. We have a nice little thing to share with you, and it's a little exclusive heads up. Something very special. So tonight we are doing a launch for you of World Kangaroo Photo Competition. So it's open. Tonight it is open. You're getting that first little exclusive time to get your photographs in. So showcase the beauty and strength and spirit of kangaroos through your lens. Pick up on what we've listened to with Steve tonight, all the lessons we've learned. Now, as it says here, the top prize is $1,000, and that includes a beautifully framed photo of your image. There's a youth prize, $300, so get your children, your teenagers, get them entering, get them with a camera, get them out there, get them away from their PlayStations or whatever they're on, get them out shooting. For you carers out there, there's a $400 prize. There is also the People's Choice Prize. So when you are getting your entries in, go and have a look at all the entries and put a vote in for your favorite one. So you can enter at allthews.worldkangarooday.org/photography. So start snapping now and get those entries in. We can't wait to see what you capture. So folks, as we look ahead to World Kangaroo Day this October 2025 on October 24th, we invite you to be part of the movement. Get involved, spread the word, share our posts, and help celebrate kangaroos as the sacred totems and national icons they truly are. Together we can make this the biggest and most powerful World Kangaroo Day yet. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you in the lead up and on the day. Loud and proud for kangaroos. And one last thing, please don't forget, put in the chat comments about where you're viewing from, because we love to see where you're all from. Just a last quick question I saw there. What is the file size limit for each photo? Is there a limit on entries per person. No limit on entries per person. And yes, less than 50 megabyte, please. So folks, get snappy, get those photographs in, enter as many times as you want, go out there, enjoy nature, and let's celebrate kangaroos and macropods across Australia for World Kangaroo Day 2025. Thank you so much, folks, for being here tonight. We will have another masterclass, as Steve said, so that will be coming up soon. Good night, all. See you soon.